call this Lancaster County special evening commissioners meeting to order for Tuesday, November 26, 2019. First item is Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie Downs, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie. Item 3 on your agenda is new business. First item is welcoming remarks. I'll open it up to my colleagues if they have any opening remarks. Sir?
Oh, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's wonderful to see everybody here for our annual budget review for 2020. It will be my last one, and we anticipate, unless there are some major changes, that it will be the 8th year in a row of a structurally balanced budget, even though it is very, as far as the general fund goes, very, very tight, but we're very proud of that. We worked very hard, and we'll reiterate what we've said in the past. It's because of all of you who manage the county functions in a very, very fiscally responsible manner that we're able to pass these budgets and do well in terms of managing the services we provide to the taxpayers of Lancaster County. Very proud of that, and again, it's because of all the help we get from respective offices in the county, elected officials, the courts, and staff on the human services side, administrative side. It's very much appreciated from my perspective, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just add my thanks to all of you. As Commissioner Stuckey indicated, it takes a whole lot of work to put together a budget, particularly one of this size and scope. It will be, assuming the budget gets adopted in substantially the same form it is in now, it will be the 8th year in a row that we'll have a structurally balanced budget, and that's no small accomplishment. I had mentioned at the meeting where we put the budget on the table that the first year that we had a budget without a structural deficit 8 years ago, Maggie Weinier had mentioned that the last time that the Board of Commissioners had adopted a budget without a structural deficit was in the late 1990s. So 1 year having a budget without a structural deficit is a big deal. Having 8 years in a row is a really big deal. And it's a credit to all of you and your work in trying to manage county resources responsibly and effectively. And it takes a lot of work to do a budget like this and to implement it. I do want to do one shout out. He's going to probably look at me cross-eyed, but that's okay. This is going to be Mike Slode's last budget. Mike has done a fantastic job for the county. I think everybody here knows that. He's an unsung hero in some ways because he doesn't like the attention, and I'm breaking all rules right now by doing so. But he's just one of those good people in public service that does a good job every day, quietly, unassumingly, and it's because of folks like him that we have a budget like this. So I just wanted to say thank you to Mike publicly. He's going to be really mad at me.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll just add, I'm going to have some remarks at the end, but I'll just add it's good to see everyone from our county team, all the department heads, as well as some members of the public. We appreciate you all being here this evening. And I'll just say it's an honor to be part of this team. You all, we have some very, just great dedicated leaders in this organization. I appreciate the work that you do every day and appreciate the work that you've done on this budget. And speaking of teams, and I agree with Commissioner Lehman's comments on Mike Slode. This is Commissioner Stuckey's last budget, and we truly are going to miss him. On a personal note, I'm going to miss him as a friend and colleague, but this organization is going to miss him too, as he's been a big part of the success we've had, certainly over the last 4 years with this board, but over the last almost 20 years as Commissioner and County Controller. When you look at the success that we have had and on many different issues, but especially on our budgeting, Commissioner Stuckey's been a big part of that. So I also want to welcome some new members of the team, including Commissioner-elect Randy Agostino, who is here. Looking forward very much to working with Ray. He's got a different skill set, and he's going to complement what we do very well. He's already hard at work on transitions, so looking forward to having him work with all of you, and also District Attorney Heather Adams, District Attorney-elect Heather Adams, who I'm very excited to work with on the criminal justice issues. She's also already hard at work on transition activities, so I'm sure many of you will be hearing from both of them, as well as Prothonotary-elect Andy Spade, who I don't see tonight, but looking forward to working with him too as part of this great team. So I think we'll probably have a few comments at the end of tonight, but if there's nothing else from the board, we will move on with our business. And item B under new business is presentation and public discussion on the proposed 2020 county budget. Chief Clerk Larry George, you going to start it off for us?
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's 2020 Lancaster County budget presentation. A couple of opening remarks I would like to make. First off, in addition to Mr. Slode, who in leaving the county leaves me as the only New York Giants fan.
We're almost there.
I would also like to thank some of Mike's colleagues, Beth Gable, who's also with the budget department, Maggie Weidinger, of course, IT Budget Services, Matt Luciani from the Controller's Office, and also Brian Herder. I'd like to thank each of these individuals. A few housekeeping items. You may have noticed we have a new audio-visual system, which hopefully has already come across as a vast improvement over what we had. Sadly, the holographic function is not working. We tried it earlier. There's 7 images of me. It was very distracting. One of them started dancing. That was scary. But I hope you find it's a vast improvement over years past. I would ask that you please mute your cell phones or put them on vibrate. One thing with this new AV system, the microphones are very sensitive. In fact, I had to warn everybody as they were walking in how sensitive the microphones were. So we have an agenda, but I would ask that you hold questions until the end. There will certainly be ample time for a question and answer period specific to any items on the budget or anything else budget related you might want to discuss. That being said, the Lancaster County organizational chart, there before you. Lancaster County remains a third-class county. However, we have Census 2020 coming up. This is a good opportunity for me to get a plug in. The county is embracing the Lancaster County 2020 complete count. It's very important that we do have every resident in the county accounted for, as it equates to significant state and federal funding for programming. Lancaster remaining a third-class county, although we anticipate that may well change with the 2020 census. We would move probably to a two-way categorization. One thing I would like to point out in the organizational structure, under organizations to the left there, we have a new budget services department, which actually goes live on Monday. Historically, that has been under the purview of our our IT department. Intellectual, sorry, Maggie had no issue with that. Laugh, okay. Come Monday, we are establishing a new budget services department. It's moving upstairs to the 7th floor. Mike and Beth will be locating at some point. We also have a new budget services director who was not able to be here this evening, but he starts on Monday. I'll certainly bring him around to introduce you to everybody, or introduce him to all of you. I think that's it really as far as the organizational changes of the past year. Highlights for the 2020 budget, as you've heard 2 of the commissioners reference, we have a structurally balanced budget for the 8th year in a row. The total consolidated budget is $341 million, with $279,411 coming from the general fund, and the remaining $130,031,230 coming from funded agencies. Funded agencies means other funding streams such as state and federal funds, in addition to various grants. The general revenue exceeds expenses by $76,000, 882 cents, and the general fund balance at 12/31/20 is projected at $39,072, 529 cents. There is no tax increase for 2020, and the millage rate remains at 2.911 for the 3rd year in a row. On a related item, this budget does not include drug task force funding. You may have heard the commissioners have committed match monies up to $519,000 for 2020. Again, that is not part of this budget. As far as the 2020 revenue, Again, the majority of that, $211 million is general fund monies, and that's a combination of county tax receipts, which of course make up the bulk of that, real estate taxes. Moving down, you see there's some state and federal grants and fees and fines. I know we have many representatives from the court administration system here this evening, and that certainly is a major factor in the county revenue. And the county match over to other funds of $13 million, $381 and 538. Combined budget is $341,310,641. Expenditures, much of that, as you see, goes to payroll and fringe benefits and other operating expenditures. The debt service is at $24 million. County match again is $13 million. And we give affiliated agency and capital project grants of around $2.6 million. The general fund comparison, 2020 versus 2019. You can see a differential of $2.6 million there. That's a 1.61% increase. Major increase in revenue is from county tax receipts, and as far as expenditures, the primary increases in payroll and fringe benefits. This chart provides a 5-year longitudinal view, 2016 to this year. You'll note that all of the expenditures have gone up over time, nowhere more so than in the county match and human services, which has seen a $10 million increase over the last 4 years. From last year, it's a $369,000 increase. It's a pie chart, general fund revenue breakdown, again, the bulk of which is county tax receipts, also fees and fines. Operating expenses by function, 39.57% of county budget expenditures are county match and human services, followed by 20.56% with core-related, down to general government, corrections, debt service, public safety, and agency grants. Village rate history, heard me reference earlier how it's been at 2.911 for the last 3 years. There has been an overall 0% increase for the last 7 years rather, going back to 2013. And there's a lovely graphic of all Lancaster County iconics. At this point in time, I will turn it over to commissioners for any comments they might have.
Commissioners, any comments there?
Just do it. First of all, I want to thank you for the presentation, Larry. And I wanted to thank you for clarifying the drug task force funding. The 2020 drug task force is not necessary for it to be in the county's 2020 operating budget, because we addressed the 2020 funding by using part of our fund balance and setting that aside in an escrow. So the funding for the drug task force is already there, so there's no need for it to be in the county's 2020 budget. So I wanted to thank you for that clarification. I also just wanted to make a couple of comments. I mean, you take a look at the fund balance at nearly, I think you said it was $39 million. Part of the reason why we have a growing fund balance is because we have been adopting and implementing some structurally balanced budgets. That has resulted in real concrete results for the county with our credit rating increase in 2017. That's a pretty big deal. We've also had a lot of conversation as it relates to the debt service of the county, particularly as it relates to a new jail. You'll see that the debt service declined slightly from 2019 to 2020, but that debt service number is going to start declining significantly in 2021. And it's around that reducing debt service that we've had conversations about how and when to move forward with a new, more modern jail. And I'm hoping that those conversations continue in earnest during the next year. The last thing I want to say is that I love joking about the Giants fans. Our only hope is that if I can convert Larry from a Giants Steeler fan, particularly now since Commissioner Stuckey's going off the board. And we've had a Steeler fan majority for the last 12 years. The only question is, red.
Eagles.
Larry, I really need you to convert the balance now. Anyway, that's all I have for now. I will have some more comments later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for the clarification. I think I'll hold my comments for now and open it up for public comment. Are there any, unless Larry, do you have anything
No,
else?
sir,
before
I'd just
that?
like to note that if anyone should have a comment, please come up to this stand here. And you don't have to lean down, the microphone is very sensitive.
Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board tonight? One coming up here, Neil, and I see your hand. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mandy Mastros, the pastor at the Meridian Center of Lancaster, just a block up the road here. And I was just wondering, are there any plans to cut the funds to the Human Service Block Grant in relation to services for homeless individuals?
Okay, thank you. Larry, do you want to address that first?
I can certainly address it, yes. And thank you for broaching the question, as the Human Services Block Grant is a state-funded program, which probably is not explained well enough to the general public. I know there's many in the county who don't quite understand how it operates. Lancaster County has been part of the block grant since 2012. The amount that we receive from the state for human service agencies has been relatively flat for the last 6 years at least. To become a block grant county, Lancaster had to relinquish 10% of the budget we were receiving for human services at the time. The proposed advantage being that at some point in time we would have full latitude with regard to how we expended those human service monies. We're talking at this point around just under $19 million, about 65% of which is behavioral health. The other categories are intellectual disabilities, drug and alcohol, homeless assistance programming, and what's called Human Service Development Fund. Human Service Development Fund is rather vague and open-ended, but we've been able to be very creative with that among some of the different initiatives we've come up with in the last couple of years. Our jointly funded CIT coordinator with the prison and adult probation parole contributing a third each into the cost of that employee. Additionally, we've staffed a social service case manager with the public defender's office. That's been helpful in helping the attorneys and not do social work. With regard to the homeless assistance program, there is a categorical amount that has been dedicated to what's called HAP, Homeless Assistance Programming. Since the inception of the block grant, that amount is $370,000. When the Homeless Coalition decided to separate from the county 5 years ago, that was largely for the purpose of being able to engage in grant funding and fundraising that it was not able to do as part of the county because they were not able to achieve a 501c3 status. In moving to Lancaster General Health, there was a contract signed with the county. We are currently in year 5 of that 7-year contract. Each year we have a negotiation period whereby there is discussion as to what amount should be put forth not only to the homeless assistance program but to the other categoricals. As part of the contract, the end goal is for the coalition, Lanco My Home, to become self-sufficient, self-sustaining through other grant sources and funding streams. We recognize that that has not happened as it was hoped, certainly at the inception of the arrangement with Lancaster General Health. Any discussion moving forward, I think, needs to take into account that they have not been as successful as was anticipated. I think we also need to look closely at how much of the county funding through the block grant is being matched, rather, by state and federal funds. That's not something we have a clear picture on at this point in time. What I can assure you is that where the homeless assistance programming funding is concerned, we will not do anything without having a dialogue, certainly, with the Homeless Coalition, Lanco My Home. Certainly, we recognize the invaluable services that they provide, the collaboration, the partnerships with the many other county entities. So, standing here, I can say to you As it stands, the contract is supposed to move towards the coalition, Michael My Home, becoming independent. But we are not going to make any decision that's rash or is detrimental to the citizens of this county. We recognize that every dollar is meaningful, and it's also a challenge to balance all of the human service categoricals. I think Commissioner Lehman has gone on record as saying he anticipated a point in time where there may well be conflict between the various departments that were receiving block grant monies because decisions would have to be made, and it may be that we're at that point now. So,
Thank you, Larry.
sir.
Commissioners, any other comments on that?
I was gonna make comments later on this, but since the question came up, I'll make them now. So to do a little bit of repeat for Larry, first of all, there is no, human services block grant funding is not part of the county's 2020 budget. I want to make sure everybody understood that. Those decisions normally get made in June. They're basically on the state fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th. So no decisions on that piece of county resources is being decided with this budget here. Is in this budget. It will be decided when the board votes on the budget. I think, Lisa, do you remember the date when we're scheduled for final consideration? December 11th. So nothing in this document or what will be decided on December 11th will have anything to do with the human services block grant funding. Larry was correct. I was not a supporter of the county becoming a block grant county for a variety of reasons. You may recall back then, the original proposal was the state would give counties flexibility among certain categorical funding streams, but it would come with a 20% cut. The 20% cut was then reduced to a 10% cut, and then how it worked after that, and that was what was adopted into law. I did not support the county becoming a block grant county because I believed over time if that 10% cuts weren't restored, we would get to the point where we would start pitting program against program. The original promise from the Corbett administration is after 3 years, those cuts would be restored. I think we're going to go into year 7 since the county became a block grant county. Those funds have yet to be restored. I did have a conversation with George Hartwick, who's the Human Services Chair of CCAP. That's the statewide association that lobbies on issues that are important to counties with the state legislature. He indicated that he thought that that's going to have to be part of the conversation with the legislature as they move toward their 2021 budget. I believe, and one other thing I should tell you is the flexibility that came with the block granting was phased in after 5 years. So 100% flexibility came in year 5. We'll now be in the 3rd year of flexibility with no restoration of the cuts. And I would argue we are exactly at that point where the potential is to start pitting program against program because resources haven't changed. The short version is we need the state to restore those 10% cuts. The comments that I was going to make tonight was related to the Homeless Coalition was that I wanted to just bring it up tonight, even though it's not part of the county's 2020 budget, to sort of get us thinking about how do we put together a block grant plan for 2021 that doesn't pit program against program, and at least as it relates to the Homeless Coalition, how can we make sure that we're still leveraging the federal dollars that we are this year, next year? Because to me, that's a big piece of this. And the question becomes, what level of support is necessary for the county to try and help ensure that that happens, knowing full well that the coalition itself has indicated that it plans to move to independence. So I think we're at a point in time where we need to be flexible in 2021 and take a look at things in total. First of all, what resources does the coalition have that help draw down federal funding? What part of those are county resources? What part of those are other resources? Are there other homeless resources in the county that could also be used as match to help draw down federal funding? And the time to have those conversations is now, not in June, when the block grant plan is going to be presented to the Board of Commissioners. So I really wanted to just put a marker down today and a challenge to all of us that work on the block grant plan, that we take a look at this in a holistic way, between now and when a block grant plan is finally brought to the Board of Commissioners. And hopefully, although I'm not very confident that it will happen, hopefully we will get some restoration from the state in 2021, and maybe that helps relieve some of the pressure here on Lancaster County. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think tonight is the night to sort of put all these issues on the table and challenge ourselves to try and not get to where I don't think any of us wants to be. Because I don't think any of us wants to be choosing between BHDS services and homeless services. That's not a good place for the county to be in, and I don't think anybody that really cares about the important services that the county provides wants to maybe making those decisions in that particular way. Final thing I'll say about this is that since we are a block grant county, we're going to have to manage our way through this process as effectively as we can. But I think if we start now, I have every confidence there's a lot of smart people in this room that can help figure out how to get there without pitting program against program. At least for 2021, I think it's going to be a continued challenge going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other members of the public may wish to address the board? Neil? Neil Ward, West Earl Township.
Thank you. I want to thank Larry for the excellent presentation. Chief Clerk, I want to also thank Commissioner Lehman for the homeless discussion we've been talking about that. And I also want to thank Commissioner Stuckey for all the years that he's put in and the support, representatives of the County Commissioners Association, and also the support that he's given me in conversations we've had, helping navigate departments.
For a lot of years.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just, I thought I wanted to summarize that. I hope that didn't want to get that forgotten. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for being here. Glad to have some members of the public here. We've had years past where we've passed a $300 million budget without any members of the public here, which tells me we're doing a good job as a team and that people are not upset, but at the same time, it's good to have members of the public here. Yes, ma'am.
So first, I just want to introduce myself for clarity before I start talking. My name is Tammy Rojas. I'm with the organization Poor People First PA. I'm also on the coordinating committee of the Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival. So I wanted to clarify and ask a couple questions because I'm really trying to understand as somebody who's organizing on a local level and state level. I do have some questions to ask. So with the human services type thing, the behavioral health, the drug and alcohol treatment, issues around homelessness. So you're saying this isn't part of this presentation, is that correct?
The homeless funding is part of the block grant plan that is
But I'm
considered.
talking all of that, I'm worried about all of that, so I'm trying to
Then-
understand.
Then ask your question again so I understand.
Okay, so I was trying to understand what you were saying and explaining. So other than the coalition, I'm talking about the actual services, like the behavioral health services, the drug and alcohol treatment services, things like that. Is there set to be a cut in those services? Whether it's because we got less state funding or not, I'm just wondering.
So just to clarify, so you're not talking about things that are funded under the block grant?
I don't know what it's funded under, I'm still trying to understand this.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question,
Okay.
because all of my comments
Mhm.
were focused on the block grant plan,
Okay.
which is considered, which is presented to the Board of Commissioners for consideration in June.
Okay.
So. if
Is that what's under that, or is it also funded two separate ways? I just wanna know, when are we gonna be talking about those kind of services, and who decides how much gets funded, and who decides on
Well, maybe-
funding from year to year?
Maybe if we do this, maybe Larry, you could give a quick overview of what's in the budget, and then if
I
that doesn't
think she's
clarify.
mostly talking about the human services
Yes.
block
Yeah.
grant.
Thank
So,
you.
I mean, if you want to have a discussion about that, the time to do that is when we're dealing with that, which will be in June, when we have our meeting.
So there's nothing with those kind of
Well,
services
but I
that
think
are,
what she's asking is there funding for BHDS? Is there funding for children and youth in this budget? The answer is yes. I'm just trying to figure out which
So it's in this budget, but then also you'll be talking about the block grant budget.
There are specific funding streams that are part of the block grant, that are part of the block grant plan, that are not part of this budget. There are other services for agencies within this budget are funded, the human services agencies. And if you go back to the presentation, the human services agencies are about 40, Maggie, I'm gonna look like 40% of the county
The
budget.
easy answer probably is, when you look at the county budget.
Just no.
There are an easy answer. The county match number, the 13 million, that's how much general fund money is in this budget to cover the county's portion of what they're all talking about that happens in the summer.
So
What
with-
happens is they do a needs-based budget in the summer for the things you're talking about. And then when we do our budget, we budget the.
Well, but that's the children and
13
youth piece of it, that's not the block grant piece
Well,
of
it's
it.
all of it, it's children, youth, all.
Well, there's a piece
drug
of
and
it, but-
alcohol. Yeah, so it's our county match, all the other funds, is what's coming out of the general fund. And then we list the other funds, but that other funds column, if you go back there, Larry, right there, where you see the other funds, if you go back over to the expenses, see, there's a revenue, and it's 13,381,538 in the middle column. That's coming from the general fund in. Here, it's the expense to the general fund on the first column.
So it's.
When you look at that second column that adds up to 130 million,
Okay.
all that revenue and expenses are the things that you're talking about. But when those numbers got decided was in the summer of this year.
Okay.
So when they're talking about what their programs, they do like meetings, they go around out in the evenings, and that's Larry could talk
So
about
when
that
you're doing
process.
Ma'am, I-
this budget with this funding, is it from the numbers you figured out already
Correct.
this past summer?
Yes.
So the block grant plan from last year are reflected in this budget document.
And does it look like what the wage trends are going, or how things are looking? Are you looking to probably get less funding from the state for these services?
It's
or-
been flat for 6 years.
6 years now, ma'am. And I should also mention, I know that both Commissioner Whiteman and Ms. Weidinger referenced the state and federal grants. You see that $86 million amount there, in the middle column.
Yeah, no.
That speaks to the block grant. That speaks to specific agency funding. Children and Youth, for instance, receives tens of millions of dollars directly from the state. That's not reflected in our general fund budget. That's other funds. Drug and alcohol, again, tens of millions of dollars. I think $34 million this past year. So it's confusing even to us.
Right, no, and
Going
I'm
up
trying
front,
to just
there were
understand.
multiple funding streams. Many of them are very specific to particular agencies, to particular initiatives. Behavioral health, for instance, in the last couple of years has generated several $1 million specific to group homes and services for individuals coming out of state hospital system. And these are all accounted for in the overall budget. So,
I guess it's just kind of confusing for me to try to understand the things around the funding, and if it's the cutting to the funding that's affecting the services we actually get, or is the funding sufficient, but the priorities or the way that we're managing things maybe isn't appropriate? And
my opinion is the funding's been flat, and that's the problem, because nothing's getting cheaper or less expensive. We keep finding additional needs. We have great ideas for new initiatives, but the funding remains flat, and that's what the challenge is.
So to give you an idea of the scope of what we do in human services, I was trying to, the 40%. So 40% of what we do is human services, and Maggie, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. It's
So that that's $108.5 million is what we spend on human services. And that includes the $13 million of county money. And the rest of that is state and federal grants that are used to fund our human services agencies. So that's, if you were talking about the total scope of what county does in human services, it's $108.5 million, which is why I asked the question, are you talking about human services as a whole or the block grant plan? So the block grant plan that was adopted last June is reflected in this budget, but the next time funding for homelessness will be considered will be next June, and that will be driven in part exactly what Larry said, is depending on what kind of state funding we do or we don't get from the state. And we are still, I mean, if you think about it in context, you got the flexibility 6 years ago. We're in year 7, and I think this is exactly what the chief clerk was saying. That 10% cut hasn't been restored in what will be 7 years unless the state provide some additional funding next year with their budget. So that's what we've been grappling with over the last 6-year period.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that helps a little bit. And I guess, like, do you know the differences as far as, like, when it comes to the block grant funding from Lancaster County versus other counties, or where I could find that information? Like, as far as comparative on how they help fund other counties versus Lancaster County?
Oh, certainly. We have the block grant plan available to you. I can give it to you in its entirety.
Awesome, yeah.
I would imagine other counties are doing the same.
Okay.
Lancaster was one of the first 20 counties to become a block grant county. I believe there are about 42 now. So
Awesome.
certainly welcome to compare counties. Yes.
Yeah, should I just give my email afterwards? or-
Sure, I give my card.
Okay, no, that works.
Is it online?
Yes, it should
Yeah,
be on.
I get it online.
It is.
Nod your head.
Why don't we get that offline with her, make sure she gets the information she
All
wants.
right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Other members of the public? Other members of staff who wish to make comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to any comments from the board, closing comments.
I'm going to save my nice comments for Dennis at the last meeting.
You can't have too
So
many.
that means he has no nice comment.
I didn't say that.
I didn't say that.
I said I'm going to save them.
But the story is, he was called out today at the CCAP meeting, which is going to be on PCN.
No, I looked back, the camera was off.
Oh, was it off?
I
Well,
was saying,
unfortunately.
until now it'll be on the
He was
webcast.
called off, he was called out for having called newly elected Governor Tom Wolf, the Honorable Tom Corbett. Now, let me tell you, Kathy Kazone, the president of CCAP, called him out in front of the whole body today. It wasn't me. I've been very kind to him, so
It's all true.
I will look forward to your comments at the last meeting of the year. I just wanted to circle back to the block grant. We were one of the original 20 block grant counties. It was then increased to 30 and capped at that. Now there are 42, but my understanding is it is open to any county that wants to be a block grant county. So it has been widely accepted. I would say in regards to the 10% cut, I think that on a forward basis, my advice would be to go to the legislature and say, what can we do to start increasing the funding? Because at the 2018 legislative conference, both the Senate and House leadership, Costa and Dermody on the Democratic side, and Saylor and Corbett on the Republican side, all said the 10% is not coming back. So we need to find ways to at least address that issue, and I'm not saying I'm not being critical of them. They've just, from a realistic standpoint, said we don't see that coming back. However, we know that we do need increased funding, and I'm not saying I agree that we just cut and not do anything about it. I will say that from today, it was announced that Human Services funding, and Commissioner Lehman referenced County Commissioner George Hartwick from Dauphin County, who has been a strong advocate for Human Services funding. It is the top priority for the County Commissioners Association to lobby the state legislature in 2020. So it is an important issue to all commissioners across Pennsylvania, both Democrat and Republican. Again, it was voted, we vote on, we set the priorities, we vote on the ones that we think are the most important. It came out on top. So again, it's a very important issue for all of Pennsylvania and all county commissioners and the association and the organization. So thank you for allowing me to bring up the shout out today. And
The full story is, so I'm president of CCAP in 2015. I'm opening the spring conference. And I look over and I said, I'm going to introduce Governor Wolf in a moment. And then as soon as I had the opportunity to introduce him, I said, I'm proud to introduce the governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. And I now own that. Every time the governor sees me, he calls me Bill. He will never, ever, ever, ever let me forget it. But the good news is I think I have the record for the best laugh to open a CCAP conference, and that record will probably last forever. So I will try to look on the bright side. But you know what? When you make a mistake in this world, you just better own it, because that's the only right thing to do.
And I will verify that Governor Wolf was very good natured about it and did laugh, but did call him Bill there too. So it set the tone for that particular meeting.
So you can call me Bill.
Any other comments, Bill?
No?
I'll just add my congratulations and great work and appreciation to Budget Services staff, as always, the controller and the controller staff who also worked together with us on this budget, and especially department heads and elected officials. Like any team effort, putting together a budget and then sticking to the budget throughout the year, which is also very, very important. You have to get the little things right to get the big things right, and clearly we're doing that here within this organization. We're being good stewards of the Lancaster County people's money, and that's who it is, the people's money, not ours. This board, when we took office, our general fund cash balance, which was essentially the money we had in the bank, now it was artificially low that year because of the impasse with the state, but it was around $2 million. In the end of last year, end of 2018, it was $38.3 million, and we're going to probably be over $40 million this year, which is as far back as we can go in financial records, as good as we've done. So our debt also was about $235 million at the end of 2018. It was $191 million. That's continued to be paid down as we also do capital projects that we need to do. So we're in the best financial condition that we've been in a long time, maybe ever, not sure. But we've done that working together. We've done that without raising taxes. And it's really thanks to what you and your staff do every day, because you're getting the little things right that come together to get the big things right. So we appreciate you, we appreciate what you do every day, we appreciate what your staff does on behalf of the people of Lancaster County, so that we have a good quality of life here. And just want to say that out loud to you all, and know that we do recognize it's because of your hard work and it's because of the team effort. Anything else from the board before we close? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourn say aye.
Aye.
Those no, the ayes have it, adjourn. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.